All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is my first live stream. If you're watching it after the fact, welcome. I'm going to be answering some questions about what I offer in my program. And we're also going to be talking about how you can work on yourself. All right. My name is Patrick Ward. I'm a neuroplastician. I help people rewire their subconscious so they can start feeling lighter, freer, and more at peace. And I want to begin today with just a simple statement, and that is we know how to update the subconscious. It does not require ketamine, it does not require you to undergo advanced hypnosis multiple times, and it doesn't take decades of talk therapy. Working with the subconscious is actually pretty easy when you know how the brain works. The problem is that you weren't given a user manual when you were born, right? Um, and so most people kind of live their whole lives not knowing that they could actually make changes within themselves if they knew how, right? But the good thing is we know how. We know how. And by the way, if you haven't figured it out, your subconscious is where your problems are, regardless of what your problem is. I know most of you are here because you're here to heal from narcissistic wounds. Um, I understand that. But right now within you, that narcissist is likely not in the room, and you're probably by yourself. And yet the wounds remained, even though you've separated. And so right now, where your issues are is your subconscious. But before we get going any further, I want to kind of plant the seed. Now, if you've done the course or in the process of doing the course, you know why I'm doing what I'm doing. But nonetheless, let's do it again, even if you've already done it. Right now, I want you to imagine a hobby you enjoy doing. I want you to maybe think of a place you enjoy going to, a pet you love to play with. But best of the best would be a feel good memory. If you have a feel good, happy memory, I want you to imagine it's happening right now. All right. So see what you would see, hear what you would hear, feel what you would feel. That memory or thing that you enjoy doing was happening right now. So close your eyes and do that right now. And I want you to notice if you can feel any feel good feelings in your body. Can you feel any feel good feelings in your body? If you can, notice where they are. See what you would see, feel what you would feel, hear what you would hear. Notice where these feel good feelings are playing out in your body. Many people, it's in their stomach and their chest. Sometimes it's in the neck or the head, but most people, it's in either the chest or the stomach. And I want you to notice that these feel good feelings, not what's going on within you, but the feelings in your body, I want you to notice they're spinning. I want you to notice which direction these feel good feelings are spinning. And as you notice which direction these feel good feelings are spinning, notice they spin faster, stronger, bigger, faster, stronger, bigger. Let them get as big and strong and fast as they want. Let them take up your entire being. All right, good job. Grab your wrist, take a deep breath in, and say peace. Now we're creating a peace anchor, and that's something that's going to get stronger and stronger the more you do it over time. And we'll be able to do some interesting things with it further down the line. But for right now, just know that it gets better each time you do it. Now, did you know, to our knowledge, human beings are the only beings capable of choosing what state they're in, to our knowledge. Um, we have the power to be able to kind of redirect our focus and attention from something that was bad to something that's good, and thus intentionally change how we feel. We have the power to do that. And that's kind of what we're going to make use of in what I do. Um, what I do is I take advantage of your brain's reconsolidation window. Every time you think of a memory, your brain will release chemicals to make the neurons in charge of that memory, the proteins of those neurons, malleable. And it does this just in case any new information was received. It's how you've learned, right? You've gone your whole life learning a little bit each day, and it's how your brain has updated over time. But we can make use of this when thinking about painful memories. It doesn't matter what your brain is doing at the time. Wherever it focuses its attention, the neurons in charge of that thing become available to be updated. So if we do this with our painful memories, we can intentionally begin to change them. So say a memory was, a 10 out of 10. It's the worst human experience you've ever had. If I make use of this reconsolidation window and I have you go to a memory that's been bothering you, and I get it to bother you one more time, just one more time, and then I quickly direct your attention to something that's either funny, relaxing, or just kind of puts you in a feel-good state. If I do that at the right time, it's going to begin to lower the emotional intensity of the memory. And we're going to do this until the memory stops bothering you. Now, for many memories, that's good enough, right? But for some memories, we're actually going to change the story of what happened. Now, there are many reasons for this. A large reason is because of your subconscious, right? So, say you had a painful experience with a romantic partner. The next time you find someone that you want to spend some time with and get to know better, you're not going to be anticipating that partner suddenly becoming, what's the bad guy, Mr. Hyde, right? Or he's not going to become, this monster out of nowhere. If we change the story, right? You're not going to be anticipating him doing that. It also works really good for, like medical issues that you may have had. Like, say you had a medical issue the last time you went to the doctor and it scared you. Well, the next time you go to the doctor, you're not going to be anticipating the worst possible news. And it does phenomenal work for people with PTSD. But back to the point though, if we can get a painful memory, say it's a 10 out of 10, and we get it down to a 0, your brain will allow you to change the story. It will not allow you to change the story if it's, it's got a slight emotional charge to it. And the reason being for that is because your brain has many jobs, but the only job that it really cares about is to keep you safe. That's the only job your brain cares about. And if there is any emotional charge to it, your brain's going to be saying, no, that's still a threat. We need to still be afraid of that thing or sad about that thing. We need to hold on to it, so we don't get hurt again. If I can keep this person fearful and anxious and depressed, well, she's going to be less likely to get herself in that situation again, right? So if we change the story, if we get the emotional intensity down to 0, your brain will allow you to change the story, and this does phenomenal stuff for your mental health. It really does. I can't recommend it enough. If you've watched the course, you've heard about my life story and why I got into this line of work. It can really, really improve your mental health quickly, too, very, very quickly. So moving forward, if we take advantage of that reconsolidation window, we can quickly change painful memories so they stop bothering you. If we take advantage of that reconsolidation window, we can quickly make ruminating thoughts fade away. If we take advantage of that reconsolidation window, we can quickly remove any cognitive distortions you may have. those mental glitches that you know aren't true, but they feel true. And so you act as if they are true, right? You know, common cognitive distortions are I'm unlovable, the world is dangerous, life's, it's not worthwhile, right? There's nothing good in this world. There are a lot of good things in this world, including you. And so we can get rid of those cognitive distortions so you start feeling better about yourself and the world around you. Okay? Now, a common argument against what I do is that you're asking people to live a lie. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm taking advantage of your brain's natural ability to update, and it's going to do this regardless of whether you want to or not. And I talk about why in that course pretty extensively. But another thing we have to keep in mind is we can't change the past because we can't change that which does not exist, right? So if you're walking around with emotional wounds, for something that maybe happened when you were younger, um, you're you're almost acting as if the past is still here, right? But it's not. It's not. And so by doing this technique, um, basically it turns off the red alarms, right? You're always going to know what actually happened. You're always going to know that. But it's not going to be what's playing in your head all the time because we've gotten rid of the emotional charge. And because of that, you're not going to be ruminating on those things all the time. And it's going to improve your mental health right off the bat. What this work actually does is it changes what you hold within you, right? Um, the stories that you're walking around telling yourself all day are just going to just fade away using this. And you're going to focus on the important things and the things that you actually have control over and the things that are actually worth your attention. Um, the painful stories that were playing nonstop in your head, they're just going to fade away. Just going to, I have no other way to explain it other than just to say that it's just going to go away in your head. You're always going to know what happened. You're not going to be fixated on, the story that I'll have you kind of replace the painful memory with. That will be there. And every time you look at the memory, that's going to be what your brain gives you. But there will be another reality. It's like you knowing that, oh, this isn't actually what happened. It's just the story I put there. So what this actually does is it changes the stories that you're constantly walking around with in your head, and it changes how you feel. That's primarily what it does. So whatever movies have been playing nonstop in your head, they're just going to go away, right? They're just going to go away. Now, how do we actually do this? That's what I'm about to talk about. All right. Now, what I want you to do is I just want you to kind of get yourself a sheet of paper, and I want you to essentially write down the bullet points of what happened in a painful memory. I understand you have a few. Just choose one to start off with. And to start off, I don't want you to do anything bigger than a 6, and I have my reasons for that, which I'll get to in a second. But anyway, choose a memory, like say 6 out of 10. Don't do a memory that's any greater than a 6 out of 10. Choose a memory that's kind of low on the Richter scale, and you're just going to do the bullet points of what happened. What did you see? What did you feel? What did you hear? Okay? What happened, basically, right? Just the bullet points. Then I want you to kind of look at the faces. Take note of what are the faces of the people involved in the memory. All right? Look at their faces. Write that down. And also turn the camera around and look at your face in the memory. What face are you making? Next, this is a very important step. I want you to trade places with the other person in the memory. Trade places with the other person in the memory and notice what they feel about you. Notice what they think about you. All right. I know you don't know, but I know that you probably have an idea of what they did. Okay. So, what do you think that person felt and thought about you? All right. Next, imagine you're a fly on the wall. Not literally, just take yourself out of your body And I want you to watch the memory outside of your body and notice what you see. Okay? Take note of that. All right? So now you should have a nice little list of bullet points, right? And that's what we're going to work on. We're going to work on these things one at a time using the technique I'm about to teach you. Oh, and if there are any submodalities, any colors that stand out, any smells that stand out, pressure or whatnot, write those down too. I was working with a lady recently who was in the Iraq War, and we had knocked out everything that on this list that I just talked to you about. But then one thing that stood out was that the ship she was on was rusty. And she's like, well, that's not important. I can't understand why that's important. Well, she doesn't really understand how the brain works. The brain works via metaphor and stories. And, the rust on that ship meant something to her, right? And so we needed to work on that as well. So all sorts of weird things can kind of stand out. Um, Whatever it is, basically write it down. If it's in your head, write it down. That's the kind of the moral of the story. Okay. Now, how this works is we're taking advantage of your brain's reconsolidation window. All right. So the first, and it's a very easy 3-step process. So you've chosen the memory. The first step is you're going to allow it to bother you. Allow the memory to bother you and just notice what you notice. Okay? Move on to the second step. The second step is you're going to focus your attention immediately on something else. Immediately on something else. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be what I'm about to talk to you about. If you like to knit, focus on knitting. If you like to do the crossword puzzle, focus on a crossword puzzle. You like to work out, work out. You like to dance, dance. You kind of get the point, right? You can do anything. You can do anything. Personally, I like to, one of my hobbies is I like to wood burn. And so if I find something that I need to work on, which I do, I'm human, I still have things that I find. What I'll do is I'll focus on my problem and then I'll immediately go and focus on the art that I'm doing with the wood burning. Okay. But again, the point is you can do anything. The point, we need to pull your brain out of the trance of the memory. And I talk about this at length in the course. We need to pull your brain out of the trance of the memory. Okay. Now, once those bad feelings are out and you're out of the funk of the bad memory, you're going to go to step 3, which is you're going to go to a happy memory, a feel good state. You're going to purposefully put yourself in a feel good state like we began this live stream with. All right. And you're going to stay there until you can feel those feel good feelings in your body. All right. Once you've done that, and you've gotten yourself from point A to point B effectively, you're going to go back and you're going to look at what you were just looking at in the memory, and you're going to see if you can make it bother you again. And if you did this correctly, you're going to notice a shift. The emotional intensity of the memory is going to be lower because your brain, it already updated the original memory with what you just did. You accomplished a bad good collapse. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to create a bad good collapse. Now, this is how you work on yourself. It's not exactly what I will do with you, but I will be making use of the same mechanisms within you to initiate change. Now, when you're working on yourself, it can take more time because one, your brain's going to lose focus and you're going to want to go do other things. And two, it can be harder to pull yourself out of the funk when you're just working on your own. But when you're working with someone like me, I can pull you out faster because I've got all sorts of tricks up my sleeve. But anyway, so back to what we're talking about. You're going to allow a memory to bother you. You're going to immediately focus your attention to something else. And then once you've pulled yourself out, you're going to go to a feel good state on purpose. All right. This is very important and it's very, very powerful. It's deceptively simple in concept, but what we're doing is actually we're essentially turning the tide within you. And that's pretty awesome when you think about it. Now, one thing you can do is you can tap. All right. Now, if you're familiar with EFT, just know that this is not EFT because in EFT, the purpose behind it is you're unblocking meridians and whatnot, and you're also focusing on your problem while you tap. But you're already more educated than most EFT practitioners out there because you now know that's not how the brain works and it's not how the brain updates because you initiated that reconsolidation window and you didn't put anything new in its place, right? You didn't do that. So what we're doing instead is we're using tapping to basically pull our brain out of the trance of the negative memory. And some points I recommend are like right inside your eyebrow, just outside near your temple, underneath your eye, top of your chest. Now these are acupressure points, and they have been shown to kind of calm your nervous system, which is why we're doing why I chose those points. All right. And once you've done that, you can kind of grab your wrist and say, peace, go into that feel good state. This is very effective. And if you want to kind of add even more fuel to the fire, say some affirmations that you would like to be true, right? A quick and easy one is, I let this go. I'm free to let this go. As I let this go, my whole world changes, right? Um, That's a very effective one, and I highly recommend doing it. But you could also pick yourself up a copy of Louise Hay, and she wrote some great affirmations. Choose one and say it as you're tapping, and that's going to begin to quickly update your subconscious. Like I said earlier, updating the subconscious is not as difficult as people have been led to believe. Right? It's been waiting for you to take charge, but you haven't. But now you know how. Right? And this is one of the ways you can do so. Allow yourself to feel bad, pull yourself out, say some affirmations by tapping on your body, and then quickly go to a feel good state. And that's going to tell your subconscious, oh, we're changing the story within us. Okay, let's do that. And so, okay, like I said earlier, we want to only, this is just a gentle reminder, don't work on a memory that's greater than a 6, okay? Don't do that because you're, like I've been saying, you're not going to be able to pull yourself out of the memory. You're just not going to be able to do it. So instead, focus on those memories that are less than a 6, but that still bother you. And by doing that, you're going to be able to pull yourself out of those feel bad states and be able to move yourself into a feel good state. That's what we need to do. All right. Um, and like I've been saying, you are not thinking about the painful memory while you're doing that distraction or that tapping. Okay. You have to purposefully look away from your problem. You don't need to look at it, right? You've already looked at it and you activated that reconsolidation window. The neurons are waiting to be updated. So now go into a feel good state. All right. Let's go ahead and practice. Let's practice real quick just so you can get an idea. So let's say your narcissist X one day said, "You're being really petty right now." That's a common one that I hear. You know, when the narcissist accuses someone of being petty and not reacting what they think the way that they think they should, right? So let's pretend that that's what your memory is, all right? So notice how that would bother you, and then we're going to come out and we're just going to say, "I let this go. I'm free to let this go. I'm happy to let this go. As I let this go, my whole world changes." All right. All right. Um, so as you let a memory bother you, uh, you're going to pull yourself out, and then you're going to tap somewhere on your body. And this is just one technique you can do. Um, Once you've fully pulled yourself out, go to a happy memory. So then go into your happy memory, and you're going to see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt. And you're going to allow those feel good feelings to kind of rise in your body. So let that happen. And once you feel it somewhere in your body, grab your wrist, say peace, and you're going to go back in. And so again, let's say the memory was, you're being really petty right now. You're being really petty. So you look at it now and you notice that the emotional intensity, it may not have dropped all the way down. It may not have dropped an entire, 2 or 3 points, but it probably lowered a little bit. And so just notice what you notice the next time you go in, and then come out, purposely come out, and you're going to do anything else. Like we can do some crazy taps on our body. We can do havening, right? If you have a crossword puzzle, you could do a crossword puzzle. It doesn't matter what. Point is, you're focusing your mind now on something completely different. All right. And then once those bad feelings you don't notice them anymore, go to a feel good state. You're going to go to a feel good state. So now go back to that happy memory. See what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt. All right. Take a deep breath in, blow it all away, grab your wrist and say, peace, peace. All right. And so that's the process. We go in, we notice what we notice, we pull ourselves out using just about anything that you want, and then we go to a feel good state. And we're trying to basically create a bad good collapse. All right. Once we've gotten the memory down to 0, your brain will allow you to change the story. And I don't recommend this for every memory, but for some of them I do. For me, I had a particularly violent memory living in my head. I needed to change that. There was no point in holding on to that. So I changed the story. Now, depending on what your story is, you may be good with just lowering the emotional intensity. But if you're afraid that something might happen again, like for me, I was afraid to go in public for a number of years. If you have some fear like that existing within you, we want to actively change the story. So we're going to change the story so that your brain's not projecting a similar event onto the future. So change the story completely and make it something good, something that you would have rather had happened that day. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be even remotely similar to what actually happened. And so by doing this, we're changing what ammunition your brain is going to use against you when you're in your room by yourself and being anxious, afraid, or depressed, right? Once you've changed the story, you're going to practice it a couple times in your head. And then you're going to do that for at least a week, 3 times a day for a week. And so after a week, when you think of that original memory, your rewrite is going to be what your brain gives you. And this is going to greatly improve your mental health. It's going to greatly improve it. I can't sing enough accolades for this. All right. Now, obviously, if you're recovering from an abusive narcissist, you're going to first focus on the memories involving the narcissist that still hurt, right? And I understand you probably have a number of them. But since you're working on yourself and you're still just kind of figuring out how to make use of this reconsolidation window, start with the small ones. And by working on the small ones, what may happen, I can't guarantee it, but what may happen is that the bigger ones, the emotional intensity of those big ones are going to lower on their own. And so eventually you might be able to attack those directly too, right? But work on any narcissist memories you have. Now, an unfortunate truth for many people that are victims of narcissists is that it didn't really actually start with them. The narcissist is just what we call a metaphoric expression of someone else. He or she is just the newest iteration of that archetype within you. And so what that means is we probably also have to work on your parents. Many people that have been victims of narcissists also had an abusive mother or an abusive father, whether it was just emotionally or physically or both. It's likely that mom or dad weren't the best, right? Now, that's not always the case. That's not a universal truth, but it happens more often than not. Um, Other possibilities are maybe you were often sick as a child, or you had some painful school experiences, but you may be one of the lucky ones where it's just the narcissist that you need to deal with, and that's great. So that means you're going to be able to get to a better place pretty fast. But for some of you, the narcissist is basically just the new stand-in for an original pain, and that original pain was dad. I was working with a woman recently. She came to me to work with, on a narcissist memories and issues. And I suspected that there was more going on, just, a learned knowing. I'm not psychic by any means, but I've been doing this long enough to just know that there's something else going on within her. And I just kind of, just as casually as I could, I asked her, was there any sexual abuse? And, she looked like I had slapped her, and she's like, how did you know? And again, it's just life experience and working with people like this. Um, what had happened was, dad was really abusive. Dad was really also negligent and kind of left her and her brother alone a lot. And so not only was dad abusive, but her brother had raped her multiple times when she was younger. So we needed to work on that too. So there's a lot going on within her, to say the least, that we needed to clean up so that she could feel better and be more confident. So work on those narcissist memories, but then also work on whoever may be the original pain. Okay, need to go work on those memories. And if you do that, that's going to start helping things pretty quickly within you. Now, this is a 12-week program. I'm going to be covering basically every nook and cranny that I can think of when it comes to narcissistic conditioning. So one of the next things we're going to work on is we're going to look at how the ex is likely going to retaliate, how your ex is likely going to retaliate. What do you think they're going to say? Who are they going to recruit against you? What are they going to do to kind of basically make your life miserable or try to hoover you back? That's a common thing that they do is, they hurt you, they act like they change so they can get you back in their circle, and the cycle repeats. So we need to work on those things. Next step is to basically work on any anger you have at yourself, any anger you have. You probably noticed there was some warning signs. Some people probably tried to warn you about it. Maybe you knew that there were certain situations you shouldn't get yourself into because you knew that might spark the narcissist off. We're going to look at all those instances and we're going to clean them up, okay? Number 3 is pretty important as well, because for many narcissists, they also had some a painful past. And what often happens is their spouses will sympathize with them. It's like, I understand why he or she is reacting that way because I know where they're coming from. Well, we want to get rid of any sympathizing that you may have for that. So we're going to clean up their past. Now, this may not sound like it's important, but like I was saying in the beginning, your brain, it operates via stories and metaphor. That's what programs your subconscious. So if we have the narcissist past within your own head, we need to clean that up so that you don't sympathize with their behavior and unintentionally get yourself hoovered back into their circle. Step 4, fear of the future. The reason that we're going to do this is because your subconscious, it does not recognize past or future. It only recognizes now. Now, why would I work on fear of the future? Well, because if you're imagining bad things that are going to happen to your subconscious, those things are actually happening right now, right? So we want to clean up any bad stories you anticipate are going to happen. We're going to clean up any resistance to that. So, common examples, who's going to get the dogs? Where are you going to live? Who's going to make those payments? How are the kids going to react? How is my family going to react? How's my church going to react? All those things, we're going to clean that up, all right? But going back to step 3, like I just said, your subconscious, it does not recognize past or future. Another interesting thing about your subconscious is that it does not recognize other people. That's an interesting thing about it. It only recognizes one consciousness, and that's your own. So if you have someone else's past within your head, it could affect your emotional state just as much as anything else. So we're going to clean that up. Number five, this is kind of an important one. We need to block the narcissist, and we need to kind of get them out of your life. So that entails blocking their calls, their texts, their emails, their social media, using this reconsolidation window that I keep talking about. We can get rid of any resistance you would have to doing those things so that you can do what you need to do. Now, if you have kids with a narcissist and you constantly kind of need to communicate with them, well, we would kind of look at some co-parenting apps that you could use, so that if you have to communicate with a narcissist, you would do so through that app. And we would look at any resistance you would have to doing that for yourself, and then having to communicate that to the narcissist. So we would get rid of all that resistance. Six is kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier. Something put a chip on your shoulder. A common thing that I've noticed when working with clients is that when healing from a narcissist, a lot of them also have a lot of health issues. Now, whether they just have health issues because that's their biology, or they have health issues because they were stressed and depressed for a long time, who's to say? You probably know where I stand on that. But we're going to look at any health issues from your past, and if like say you had a cancer diagnosis and you're still healing from cancer, we will kind of go back to those moments and where you had the doctor give you the bad news and told you what you have to do. We would notice those feelings within you, and we would kind of get the emotional intensity down to zero, right? We don't want to walk around with all this baggage, all right, all this emotional baggage. Let's clean it up so that you start feeling better. All right. 7, a common issue people recovering from narcissistic abuse have is that they adopted unhealthy coping mechanisms. That could be just doom scrolling, binge eating, binge drinking. Um, pot pens are on the rise. If there is any sort of reward system in place, we kind of need to kind of get that out of your head. The reason being is because to your brain, if it feels bad, but then there's something good that it has to look forward to at the end of the day, it will be less likely to let go of the pain because it's looking for that reward. The reward means more to your brain than the pain and the misery. So there's some tricks that I have to make those reward systems kind of as appealing to you, to put it bluntly or simply. So we're going to basically change how your brain reacts to the thought of doing those things. Now, obviously, I can only do this if you want to do it, but I highly, highly, highly recommend doing it, because if your brain, if it thinks there's any reason it should hold on to this pain, such as, well, I want to be able to do this thing that I enjoy doing at the end of the day, every day. If I don't have a reason to do that, well, what's the point? We need to get rid of that so that you can truly heal and move on from the narcissist. All right, last but not least, if you've had a trauma or a tragedy within your brain for a long time and it's suddenly gone, there can be a void. And I've experienced this definitely after the miscarriage and the shooting. I was walking around with that pain and the misery for a long time, and then it's just suddenly gone. I was just like, I don't know what to do, right? It's kind of like, you suddenly got revenge, and now, like, what do you do now? Like, well, I got the guy that, like, say you're in a Hollywood movie, you killed the bad guy, and now what do you do with your life? Well, we need to find meaning. We need to find meaning for you. What could what could you possibly do moving forward that would make you excited, that would give you joy, that would give you purpose, right? That would give you purpose. We need to find that. You may not know right off the bat. So we need to figure that out. And what we need to do is we need to see if there's any resistance to you doing that. And we're going to get rid of the resistance so that you can finally do that thing that you've always wanted to do, but for some reason you felt like it wasn't for people like you, right? So it will get rid of the resistance so that you can go live the life that you want to live. Lots of things can be done with this reconsolidation window if you haven't figured it out. All right. So my program, it's 12 weeks. 12 weeks, we're going to completely change your mental landscape. And you're going to be in a much better place. You're going to be in a much, much better place. So the things that were triggering you are not going to trigger you. And you're going to have some optimism for the next day and the day after. And you're going to find joy again. If you're interested, contact me. We'll set up a time to talk. We can talk about what your specific story is and what I think what you could most benefit from. All right. That's my live stream. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. You can post them in the group. But otherwise, take care, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.